Karina, what are the main takeaways from Pierre Poilievre's speech?
Well, first of all, it's not every day that in a single speech you hear both references to Marcus Aurelius and MacGyver. But Pierre Poilievre also quoted Stephen Harper, JFK, and Pierre Elliott Trudeau. So lots of references in this speech. His thoughts really on where we're at in terms of Canada-U.S. relations, how we got here, talked a bit about complacency by both Canada and the U.S., and how we go forward, or how he thinks we should go forward. Now, there was some definite overlap with things we've also heard from the Prime Minister on this, such as controlling what you can at home, since you cannot control what Donald Trump does. That Donald Trump, as you heard there, is wrong about Canada as a target or as a 51st state. But there was a real effort to also differentiate. And that is especially true in terms of the time we're at. So have a listen to the first clip on that.
We should not declare a permanent rupture with our biggest customer and closest neighbor in favor of a strategic partnership for a new world order with Beijing. Never make the mistake of confusing engagement with dependency. China is not a substitute for the United States of America.
Now, he also talked about what we can and what we should not be doing here in Canada. He said the worst tariffs are really self-imposed via high taxes and slow permits and impediments to resource extraction and exportation. So he said the Canadians and the government needs to stop thinking like bureaucrats and be more like MacGyver. And for those not familiar with that TV show, that's really about being more nimble and able to improvise. And really what he has said before in other ways, get out of the way of Canada doing its thing. And, you know, he did acknowledge as well that even with diversification, something that he says he favors, the U.S. will always be next door. Have a listen.
The Prime Minister proclaimed in the Davos speech that he wanted a new middle power alliance. Actually, there's nothing new about it at all. We already have that. We've had it for years. In fact, Canada already has free trade with over 50 other countries, and most of them are middle powers. We should look to deepen those relationships, but their markets are already open to us. The problem is not that these countries block our products from coming in, it's that our own government blocks our products from getting out.
And so, Karina, I guess one of the key questions is, why this speech and why this speech now? Because there was, a lot of talk about how at the Conservative Leadership Review, he didn't name President Trump. And I don't want to be too focused on that superficial aspect of it, but it almost felt as though we wanted to hear him say the president's name. You wanted to hear him talk about what the president says about the 51st state and other things about trade with Canada.
Well, timing is everything, and there have been some that mused that once the leadership was out of the way, and successfully so for Pierre Poilievre, that now he's free to also put this on the table. There had been longstanding criticism, never mind just mentioning Trump or not mentioning Trump, that he needed to talk more about Canada-U.S. relations and what has happened over the last number of months. In fact, not addressing the elephant in the room is partly why he lost the election, according to some. So it doesn't help right now that you have this actually widening of the polls, putting him even further behind. And so, obviously, the thinking behind that is again, it's the Trump issue. And so if he wants to try and bring that gap back closer together, he has to reassure Canadians that he has ideas on this, that he's been thinking about this, that he's willing to talk about it, and that he has a plan. Have a listen to a pollster we interviewed on this.
Look, I think he has to differentiate himself. That's the nature of marketing in any, whether you're marketing ideas or products. If you were like your competitor, why wouldn't you just choose the competitor who's clearly in the lead right now? I don't know. I honestly don't know if this attempt to find some differentiation on the issue like China or on energy is going to be enough, but I think he has to try.
So his speech was full of ideas we've heard from him before, but some new ones as well, such as a critical minerals reserve, more thoughts on digital sovereignty, having an all-party CUSMA strategy group that goes above partisanship. But as he also said in his speech, that any plan should be based in realism. So he's likely going to face some criticism over ideas like a new tariff-free auto pact with the U.S. that could include Canada banning Chinese-made cars because it does ignore the non-binary reality of trade, as canola farmers certainly found out in Saskatchewan. I should mention, Andrew, this comes before his first international trip as opposition leader to the UK and Germany. It also comes on the same day, as you mentioned, as fireside chat with Dominic LeBlanc, the Canada-U.S. Relations Minister, who is headed to Washington, D.C. next week to meet with Jamieson Greer.
And we should point out, Donald Trump says over and over again, we don't need Canadian cars, we want cars made in the U.S. So how all that works when it comes to car production, we'll see. The CBC's Karina Roman in Ottawa. Thank you.